Did you know that you can get file validation and type checking for this file over here just by adding this? Or did you know that this import over here will happen before all those console logs up top of there? And this one, on the other hand, will happen last. Hi, I'm Bosco Domingo, this is Elite Software Engineering. And if you found those two things interesting, you are at the perfect video to learn all you need to know about TypeScript and JavaScript imports. Let's go. FYI, this is the module that we'll be working around. Very simple, two functions. One is a default export and returns 1. The other one is a regular function, also exported, returns 2. And then we also have some code that always runs when this module is imported, which will be printing one environment variable and also printing the name of the file itself. That's it. Here we have the most basic import, which is the default one. All it does is take the default, literally whatever is named as a default, and that can only be one thing per module. It takes that and imports it with its name. And as you can see, the result is as expected. The first thing that gets printed is the result of the variable, which is not set yet. Then we get told that the module has been loaded successfully, and then everything after that is the code in the file itself, which is just printing that default function and the process on before exit. Next up is the named import, which is a very common one as well. In this case, what we're doing is we're going for specific properties that have been exported, but may not necessarily be the default, so we need to address them by name. This is extremely useful when you want to reduce the footprint of importing a module. And in fact, default imports, as we saw before, they're no more than a shorthand for this. Do be aware that some things may not be expressly exported, such as, for example, the on method of the node process. So we can't access it like that. We always have to go through the process object. That's the difference, and that's really important. And indeed, if we run the code, you can see same thing as before, because we're importing a module. Even though we're only importing certain bits, the entire code still runs, and then everything that is in the code itself, which is just that console log of the exported function. Next up is a combination of the previous two, known as mixed imports, and they're mixed because in the same import statement, so we're only running our module once, or whatever we're importing, we're only doing that once. We're still importing the default on one side, and then all the other named properties that we may need. So in this case, if we do env myvar and we set one environment variable, it doesn't really matter if we then access it through process.env or if we access env as we imported it named here. Something that is really, really interesting as well, and I wanted to mention it here, is that import statements get hoisted. What that means is you can imagine as if this line of code was actually up here. In terms of runtime, it'll be the exact same thing, right? It doesn't matter where you do this import because it's just a regular import. So what JavaScript will do is it'll run all the imports first in the order that they are present. So node process will be imported first, and then my module. This code, my module, will be run before any of the code in this file. So that's really important to keep into account at all times. And so if I run the code, as you can see, my module runs first. Then it prints the environment variables. So my var, both printed at the same time. And then my two functions, they're both 1 and 2. I have to interrupt the video to mention that all the code in this video, as well as all the videos that I've done in the past and all the videos that I will do in the future, will be present in the description down below, as well as in the pinned comment. So go and check it out. There's also a written version of this video in a blog post if you prefer it as a cheat sheet or somewhere where you can easily copy paste code to have as a reference instead of having to refer to this video. Then that will also be in the description and pinned comment. Go and check those out. But with that all said, let's keep going with the video. Another very common import is using aliases. In this case, all we're doing is the exact same thing as the named import, except we're giving it our own name to be able to reference it however we want. And you may think, well, why would I want to do this? It's extremely useful in case you have imports that collide in name. So you can't import them both with the same name. Obviously, you need to give them separate ones. So this is great for that. Or if the name may be a bit too long, or simply quite the opposite, too short, and it doesn't convey enough context that you would rather be a bit more clear about what you're importing. So that's a great use. This is the namespace import. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, give me everything that is exported in this module and name it my export. What this means is you access absolutely every single property that you can. Obviously, you're bringing in a lot of things, so be aware of that. You may find in cases that your bundle size increases significantly. This is important in the front end, especially. So just beware that that can happen as a result of this. It is also meant as a very a good practice, I think, for ESM. If I recall correctly, this is like the suggested way to import. The problem is that it renames whatever is the default. Even if it did have a different name when it was declared, the only way to access it is through the .default keyword. And you can see actually that it does tell me what the real name of this should be, but as you can see, there's no exported default function here. However, everything else will still be available in the same name, under the same name. You can always do an extraction like this to get the actual default, but that does require renaming. It's kind of annoying, so just FYI. Next up is a very controversial one, and this is the side effect import. All we're doing here is importing a specific file just to run that code before anything else. We're not actually taking anything from it but the execution. It could be useful to set environment variables or to perform some set of actions before the rest of the code in our actual file runs. However, please make sure that you always include a comment like this one of why that import is there. Another very important aspect is with the fact that import statements are always executed in order. If this node process counts on certain environment variables being set, and we don't run the .env/config, which, if you don't know it, this basically loads a .env file that you have in that same folder. If this env file contains certain values that are necessary for modules that have been imported above it, they will not have been set yet, and thus these imports may fail when running their own code because we didn't import this one at the very top. And the thing is with import statements is that normally they get reorganized or automatically organized by linters and formatters. So it is very crucial that side effects, you do whatever's possible to try to keep them at the top. So if I run this code, what you can see is that my variable is undefined when we read from it in my module. However, when we actually read it in the code after loading the .env/config, then yes, we get subscribe to Elite Software Engineering on YouTube, which is a fantastic message and definitely something you should be doing if this kind of video is useful to you. So this one is very, very new, to the point that I believe it's still in proposal, phase 4, I believe, in order to become part of the ECMAScript standard, but it is not yet technically part of JavaScript. However, it is extremely well supported already in most of the latest runtimes, so you should be fine if you're on a newer Node version or Bun or Dino or in the browsers, I believe. So what this one does is it gives you type safety for JSON files, but not only JSON files. It's also CSS, I believe, HTML files, and they have a whole host of other files that they want to add support for. For now, the biggest one is JSON. It's the easiest one to work with. If you go here, you see my JSON file is very simple. However, what we get in JavaScript is type safety, which is amazing. But also, you still have all the flexibility of old JavaScript, so you can still change many things, and it won't fail because this property doesn't exist in the original JSON. It's fine. You can add it because you've technically just loaded a simple object. Oh, and of course, if we do it with Node, it'll fail. It can't do it. It can't load the CSS file. For Bun, it can load it, and as you can see, all it really does is it prints the path. Not really useful. However, for the JSON, everything works as expected. It's fantastic, and it's definitely something I recommend you try because it's a game changer. And just as proof, yes, when you run it with Node with the CSS code commented out, then yes, as you can see, JSON works just fine. And last but not least, we have a TypeScript specific import. In this case, what we're doing here in this code is lazily loading a component. The problem is, as you can see, that this import is being used with the function form. So with this, what you're doing is you're loading something directly by its path. Imagine it's not going to be referencing anything. When you actually go to the component, you will not see a reference to it unless you do this. This is a type import. This is very common to do for other things, such as when you want to, give the type of a specific file or a specific property, or an object. You want to make sure that in TypeScript you're telling it with a type annotation, this is of this type. You can also use, by the way, satisfies and as const. If you want to know more about that and why they're so much better, check out this video over here. But yeah, back to the topic at hand. In this case, we're using the type import as kind of a hack. Why? When you import something as a type, specifically as a type, it means that at runtime, that code will not be there. After compilation of the TypeScript code into JavaScript code, that import is completely removed. Essentially, this is a no-op. This is purely for TypeScript. The great thing is that while we still remove this from the JavaScript, and if you want to see where, this is the actual output code of compiling that JavaScript. As you can see, the only import here is this require from React and the require of the actual component, but no my component actual import. There's nothing here from that type import. Essentially what we're doing here is we're saying this my component, we can link back to it. And the awesome thing is that when we look for references for this component, which, remind you, was not being referenced because this is just a string, now it is, because we linked directly to it. Much easier to just go directly to it and keep that reference as well. So if at any given point someone else comes in here and says, oh, who's using this component? Why do we have this code here? If they don't see any references, they may delete it, but now they will know, oh, okay, this is being used somewhere else. It's just being lazily loaded. You can always still use them as regular, as normal, to give types to everything else instead of in a JS doc. But I wanted to showcase a bit of a more unconventional way of doing this, and something that I think is fairly interesting and a great use of type import. That's it. Hope it was useful. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. If you actually go ahead and subscribe, even better. Check out the GitHub repo. Check out the blog article if that's useful to you as well. Check out any of my other videos. YouTube should be recommending one for you right over here. And I'll see you guys on the next one.